those who are continually at war with each other or those who support one another. We at once see that those animals which acquire habits of mutual aid are undoubtedly the fittest. They have more chances to survive, and they attain in their respective classes the highest development of intelligence and bodily organization. If the numberless facts which can be brought forward to support this view are taken into account, we may safely say that mutual aid is as much a law of animal life as mutual struggle, but that, as a factor of evolution, it most probably has a far greater importance, inasmuch as it favours the development of such habits and characters as ensure the maintenance and further development of the species, together with the greatest amount of welfare and enjoyment of life for the individual, with the least waste of energy. Of the scientific followers of Darwin, the first, as far as I know, who understood the full purport of mutual aid as a law of nature and the chief factor of evolution, was a well-known Russian zoologist, the late Dean of St. Petersburg University, Professor Kessler. He developed his ideas in an address which he delivered in January 1880, a few months before his death, at a congress of Russian naturalists. But like so many good things published in the Russian tongue, only that remarkable address remains almost entirely unknown. Leaving aside the pre-Darwinian writers like Thusnell, Fee, and many others, several works containing many striking instances of mutual aid, chiefly, however, illustrating animal intelligence, were issued previously to that date. I may mention those of Rousseau, Les facultés étalées des animaux, 2 volumes, Brussels 1872, L. Buchner's Aus dem Geistesleben der Tiere, 2nd edition in 1877, and Maximilian Perthes Über das Seelenleben der Tiere, Leipzig 1876. Espinasse published his most remarkable work, Les Sociétés Animales, in 1877, and in that work he pointed out the importance of animal societies and their bearing upon the preservation of species, and entered upon a most valuable discussion of the origin of societies. In fact, Espinas's book contains all that has been written since upon mutual aid, and many good things besides. If I nevertheless make a special mention of Kessler's address, it is because he raised mutual aid to the height of a law much more important in evolution than the law of mutual struggle. The same ideas were developed next year (in April 1881) by G. Lanessan in a lecture published in 1882 under this title, La lutte pour l'existence et l'association pour la lutte. J. Romain's capital work, Animal Intelligence, was issued in 1882 and followed next year by The Mental Evolution in Animals. About the same time (1883), Buchner published another work, Leben und Lebensleben in der Tierwelt, a second edition of which was issued in 1885. The idea, as seen, was in the air. As a zoologist of old standing, he felt bound to protest against the abuse of a term, the struggle for existence, borrowed from zoology, or at least against overrating its importance. Zoology, he said, and those sciences which deal with men continually insist upon what they call the pitiless law of struggle for existence, but they forget the existence of another law which may be described as the law of mutual aid, which law, at least for the animals, is far more essential than the former. He pointed out how the need of living progeny necessarily brings animals together, and the more the individuals keep together, the more they mutually support each other, and the more are the chances of a species for surviving, as well as for making further progress in its intellectual development. All classes of animals, he continued, and especially the higher ones, practice mutual aid, and he illustrated his idea by examples borrowed from the life of the burrowing beetles and the social life of birds and some mammalia. The examples were few, as might have been expected in a short opening address, but the chief points were clearly stated, and after mentioning that in the evolution of mankind mutual aid played a still more prominent part, Professor Kessler concluded as follows: I obviously do not deny the struggle for existence, but I maintain that the progressive development of the animal kingdom, and especially of mankind, is favoured much more by mutual support than by mutual struggle. All organic beings have two essential needs, that of nutrition, and that of propagating the species. The former brings them to a struggle and to mutual extermination, while the needs of maintaining the species bring them to approach one another and to support one another. But I am inclined to think that in the evolution of the organic world, in the progressive modification of organic beings, mutual support among individuals plays a much more important part than their mutual struggle. Open footnote. Memoirs (Trudy) of the St. Petersburg Society of Naturalists, Volume 11th, 1880. Close footnote. The correctness of the above views struck most of the Russian zoologists present, and Sayevetsov, whose work is well known to ornithologists and geographers, supported them and illustrated them by a few more examples. He mentioned some of the species of falcons which have an almost ideal organization for robbery, and nevertheless are in decay, while other species of falcons which practice mutual help do thrive. Take on the other side a sociable bird, the duck, he said. It is poorly organized on the whole, but it practices mutual support, and it almost invades the earth, as may be judged from its numberless varieties and species. The readiness of the Russian zoologists to accept Kessler's views seems quite natural, because nearly all of them have had opportunities of studying the animal world in the wide uninhabited regions of northern Asia and East Russia, and it is impossible to study like regions without being brought to the same ideas. I recollect myself the impression produced upon me by the animal world of Siberia when I explored the Vitim regions in the company of so accomplished a zoologist as my friend Polyakov was. We both were under the fresh impression of the origin of species, but we vainly looked for the keen competition between animals of the same species, which the reading of Darwin's work had prepared us to expect, even after taking into account the remarks of the third chapter (page 54). We saw plenty of adaptations for struggling, very often in common, against the adverse circumstances of climate or against various enemies, and Polyakov wrote many a good page upon the mutual dependency of carnivores, ruminants, and rodents in their geographical distribution. We witnessed numbers of facts of mutual support, especially during the migrations of birds and ruminants, but even in the Amur and Usuri regions, where animal life swarms in abundance, facts of real competition and struggle between higher animals of the same species came very seldom under my notice, though I eagerly searched for them. The same impression appears in the works of most Russian zoologists, and it probably explains why Kessler's ideas were so welcomed by the Russian Darwinists, whilst like ideas are not in vogue amidst the followers of Darwin in Western Europe. The first thing which strikes us as soon as we begin studying the struggle for existence under both its aspects, direct and metaphorical, is the abundance of facts of mutual aid, not only for rearing progeny, as recognized by most evolutionists, but also for the safety of the individual and for providing it with the necessary food. With many large divisions of the animal kingdom, mutual aid is the rule. Mutual aid is met with even amidst the lowest animals, and we must be prepared to learn some day, from the students of microscopical plant life, facts of unconscious mutual support, even from the life of microorganisms. Of course, our knowledge of the life of the invertebrates, save the termites, the ants, and the bees, is extremely limited, and yet, even as regards the lower animals, we may glean a few facts of well ascertained cooperation. The numberless associations of locusts, Vanessae, Cincidellae, Cicadae, and so on, are practically quite unexplored, but the very fact of their existence indicates that they must be composed on about the same principles as the temporary associations of ants or bees for purposes of migration. As to the beetles, we have quite well observed facts of mutual help amidst the burying beetles (Necrophorus). They must have some decaying organic matter to lay their eggs in, and thus to provide their larvae with food. But that matter must not decay very rapidly, so they are wont to bury in the ground the corpses of all kinds of small animals which they occasionally find in their rambles. As a rule they live an isolated life, but when one of them has discovered the corpse of a mouse or of a bird which it hardly could manage to bury itself, it calls 4, 6, or 10